Now I'm going to be talking to you about communication systems. Again, this is part of the HSC content. So we're talking here about the way that we communicate with people. So we need to cover communication cycle, types of communications, effective communication techniques, and the way that we go about getting things done, those specific lines of communication. So let's get started here, the communication cycle. The communication cycle is this flow chart that we think of where we send messages, receive messages to work out, have people heard what we said. And the image I've got on the screen is the best way I've been able to find that visualizes this process. We're going to start over the left here. I'm just going to turn on my screen. I'm just going to turn my pointer on. We start here with me. I am right now the sender. I have a message. The message is me talking about this slide, and I'm using my voice and I'm using the screen presentation to send a message from me over to you. You are the receiver. Now, just because I'm speaking does not mean you are listening and that you have understood. So as a receiver, you need to listen to what I've said, you need to decode it, break it down, understand it, and you then need to send some sort of message back to me to let me know you've understood it. Now this is easiest to think about in a verbal conversation where we're standing next to each other. So I might say, "Hi, how are you today?" That message gets sent. You hear it, you decode it, you say, "How am I? I'm good." And so you encode your own message and you send it back as feedback. It might also be me saying, "Are you okay?" I send that message over verbally, you receive it, you decode it, and then you nod to say, "Yes, I am okay." And that's you giving me feedback to let me know that you have received it. I decode that information to understand it. And it's a constant cycle or a constant loop of communication. Now, sometimes messages are lost. Messages, I might send something, I might say something to you, but you don't receive it. And that can be because of noise. Noise could be actual noise, so it could be a loud playground of children, so loud that you can't hear what I'm saying to you. It could be the noise of a fan in a server room. It could be a beeping noise from an alarm that's going off on an overheating computer component. There could be a number of things that are considered to be noise. It could be actual noises, or it could be the environment we're in. It could be that we're in different rooms and my message actually can't get through to you. We also have a couple of different channels of communication that we use. Sometimes we meet face-to-face. Sometimes we meet in video conferencing like Zoom. Video calls like FaceTime. Sometimes in video itself, just like this one here, where I've recorded a video and I've just sent it to you. It could be emails, it could be letters, it could be social media, it could be websites, wikis, whatever it might be. Depending on the communication channel we use, depends on the type of feedback that you need to give. When you're talking to someone, they usually give you non-verbal feedback a lot of the time, where they nod, okay, or they smile when you say something, or they might laugh when you say something funny. That's feedback. Okay? You don't realize you're giving it, but you're giving that person feedback to let them know they understand. When I record a video like this, how do I get feedback to know whether you've understood it? Because I can't see you. Well, the only way I get feedback is for you to comment on the video to ask me a question, or for you to use a new channel of communication, like email perhaps, to send me an email to say, "I need extra help with something." These are communication channels. We use a communication cycle. It is a loop of sending, receiving, sending, receiving. And every time we receive it, we decode it to understand it. We then encode a new message and send it back. The communication cycle. So now let's talk about types of communication. There are three main types here. The first I'll start with is verbal. Verbal communication is me using my voice. Sounds, words, language, speech. It's between people individually, so what we call interpersonal, where it's between you and me. Intrapersonal, where it's amongst multiple people. Small groups, public communications, whatever it might be. We then have non-verbal communication. So verbal, using your voice. Non-verbal, no voice at all. This could be shaking your head, nodding. It could be eye contact. It could be the sounds that your voice makes. Not the language, but the sounds that it's making. in terms of the volume. If you're speaking really soft, it sounds a little different to if you're speaking really loud. And also, if I speak really fast, you start to think I'm really excited, but if I slow it down, it sounds a lot sadder. So there's a whole heap of non-verbal cues in the words that we say that can help to provide a little bit of information to people. And lastly, there's written communication. Written communication is very black and white. It's hard to read into any feelings or any emotion if written communication is done. So quite often people say, oh, he's being so rude in this email, but it's hard to read tone in an email. So if you think of everything objectively, black and white, written communication needs to always be very clear what the message is, because you don't have volume, pitch, rate, eye contact, body movement, etc. to help explain it. Now, the types of written communication we use, it's not just sending letters to people to communicate with them, but it's also about documenting procedures, writing a procedure for how to install an operating system, a manual, for example. That's us communicating with someone. You are communicating with the person that is trying to install the operating system. Okay, so all of those documents are communication types as well. So what is it that makes really good communication? Well, it starts with actually listening. Now, I know that seems really obvious, but you've got to actually listen to people. I have seen so many times recently where I'm speaking to people and they just pick up their phone and quickly check their Facebook or their Instagram or their TikToks while I'm talking. That sort of thing is really disruptive to good communication because it stops me from working out whether you've actually heard the message. Now, you might be listening, but you may not actually be taking it in, or you may not be giving me the information I need to know whether you've understood it. So I need those non-verbal communication techniques to let me know. I also need active listening. Good communication involves active listening, and active listening is where I say follow-up questions at the end of a statement to check that I've understood. So you might say to me, "Sir, can you go and can you help me install SketchUp on my computer? I'm having some issues." I said, "Okay. So you want me to install SketchUp on your computer? Have you tried this?" Active listening, the part there was, so you want me to install SketchUp on your computer. That's what I'm confirming my understanding. Using plain and clear English, not talking in the vernacular, not talking in that technical jargon of the industry. So not saying to someone that comes up to you, "Oh, I need to upgrade, I need to install SketchUp, but I can't get it to work." You don't say to them, "Oh, your OS is too low, you need to upgrade to 10.3.1 because otherwise the video processor isn't going to be able to compute it." You don't just talk in that sort of gibberish. Okay? When you're talking with a client, okay, one of the customers that we are serving, you need to speak in a language they're going to understand and say things like, "Okay, well, your operating system, that's the bit of software that sort of runs your computer. It's a little bit out of date, so I'm going to need to update it, and then your new program will be able to work." Clear and plain English so they can understand. And lastly, feedback as well. Letting them know that you understand or don't understand what they are saying. Now, I've got a video here on some effective questioning techniques. I'm going to leave that. There's going to be a transcript of that available for you. But you've got to think there's two main things we want to talk about when we think about this video, and that's open and closed questions. Am I asking you a question that is yes or no? Or am I asking you to describe how something gets done or why something gets done? Open and closed questions are very different. And so have a look at that video so that you understand a little bit more about them. Effective listening techniques. What are they? How do they work? How do we know it's an effective technique? Well, it includes looking at people, facing them, giving them your attention. Don't try to guess what they're going to say before they say it. Listen to what they're saying and try to imagine what they're saying. Don't interrupt them. Let them finish so that you get the full message. When they finish their description, use that break in the conversation to ask any follow-up questions to show that you've understood. What stops communication from being successful is probably easier for you to understand. The first way, things that stop you from having good communication, being on your phone while you are talking to someone, That's a barrier to communication. A barrier for communication is anything that stops that communication from being effective. Looking at your computer while you're talking to someone, barrier to communication. Listening to someone and thinking to yourself, man, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard, or this person is so confused, or, oh, they don't even know what an operating system is. Making those sorts of judgments, yep, that's not going to help your communication either. It's rude, it's inconsiderate, but it also stops you from being able to pay attention to what they're actually asking you, okay? Being critical, things like saying, don't you understand anything? That's not actually helping the situation. Like I said, technical language, really tricky here, trying not to use acronyms, trying not to use that really high level sophisticated language, that tier 3 language that might stop them from understanding. Giving people unwanted advice is usually not helpful to communication, but also ignoring what they're saying by not addressing the problems or not taking into account the way that they've had the conversation with you and diverting it to be about you. So when someone might come up to you and say, oh, I'm really struggling with this, I need some help, you don't say, oh, okay, well, on the weekend I did this, and just completely ignore their concerns because you don't want to deal with it. Those things are not great for communication. In IT, we've been through this, lots of ways that we communicate, but the main way that we communicate, emails and phone calls. Our emails are usually a result of a form submission in a help desk operation. This is where someone might go online, fill in a form, says, I need help with this system, it's having this problem with me, it's this level priority. Okay, we use a logging a job system. Starts as a form, gets summarized into an email, comes through to us. We then get that email, tells us what we need to do, we call the client back to resolve it. We also use some of these other things as well, but general help desk, it's a combination of emails, phone, and form. And lastly here, very last one on the communication set, lines of communication. When we communicate at work, it's important to understand your company's hierarchy and the lines of communication that are appropriate. What I mean by that is you've got to make sure that you're communicating with the right people when you're trying to get things done. For example, if you are a help desk operator, right down here, first line of help, and you're having a problem with the job you're doing and you need extra help, you wouldn't call the CEO of the company to give you that help. You shouldn't call the CEO of the company to give you that help. You should first try and ask your boss. So when we talk about lines of communication, we're actually talking about going here and following the line up your hierarchy to the next level. And in this case, the next level here is the ICT support coordinator. That's the manager of the IT team. This person is the person that you ask for help initially. Now, if they don't know the answer and they need help, they follow their line and they go up and they go to the ICT operations service manager. Now, if that person can't resolve the issue, they go up the line and they get to the associate director. And if they can't solve it, they go up the line to the director of finance and information. We call these lines of communication because you are literally following the lines in your company's organizational chart. Okay? Organizational charts are set up as hierarchy, so you've got your bottom level working all your way up to the top level. Okay? The ones down the bottom are usually lowest level employees, the ones at the top level employees. Okay? Paid more at the top, paid less at the bottom. Higher responsibility at the top, lower responsibility at the bottom. Okay? Work in an individual office, work in a shared office. Okay? Bit of an idea. So, lines of communication, following the line up, asking for help where required. If this person needed help from infrastructure, they wouldn't just jump over to the IT service manager either. They might go across to someone on their same level. They might go across to an infrastructure analyst or telecom support or a switchboard operator. Okay? So same level or one level up is the appropriate line of communication. The same procedure goes for when you have issues at work. We spoke about this in the health and safety unit, but if you have a grievance at work and you want to make a complaint where someone is bullying you, for example, the first point would be to have a chat to your boss. But if that person is the person that is bullying or harassing or intimidating you, you then have permission to jump the line and go to the next person up. If they don't resolve your issue, you go to the next level again, etc., until you go up. When we're talking, bullying, intimidation, all of that sort of human resource side of our jobs, sitting to the side of your boss of your department is usually a HR department. That is also another channel of communication that you have that exists when you need that help. So look, that's the end of the slide deck here. That's the end of the communication chapter. That's also the end of all of the lectures for this working in the ICT industry chapter. So I hope that's been really helpful. You've got some really good notes there. You've answered all the questions. Now we're ready to go in and start working on our assessment task and finalizing all those little bits and bobs to make sure we understand what's going on. Hope that's been really helpful for you, and see you soon.